Since its original release in 2013, the Subaru Crosstrek has become incredibly popular. Not only has the segment itself exploded, but the Crosstrek has become Subaru's third best-selling model in just a few short years since it's been out. However, most people don't realize that this little crossover SUV started its life as this. This is a Subaru Impreza Outback Sport. And I'm going to explain to you how this guy spawned the Crosstrek. I'm driving a 2000 Impreza Outback Sport. And this is the granddaddy of the Crosstrek. And a lot of people don't really realize that. They think that the Crosstrek's all new as of 2013. But no, it started here. And here's why. So in 1993, when the first generation Impreza made its debut, the following year, in 1994, it got an Outback edition. Now, Outback, to modern ears, is a Subaru Outback. It's its own car. But back then in the 90s, Outback was a trim level for Subaru. This explains why if you're driving around and you see an old-looking Outback, on the right-hand side of the tailgate, it does say Outback. On the left-hand side, it says Legacy. And that's because, again, it wasn't its own car yet. The Legacy Outback, and in this case, the Impreza Outback Sport, were Outback editions of the existing Legacy and Impreza models that Subaru offered at the time. There wasn't a separate Outback model, it was just a trim level. And what the trim level meant was you got a lift kit, so taller suspension than the standard Legacy or Impreza, and a kind of rugged two-tone paint job with some roof rails to make it look more like an SUV. In the case of the Impreza Outback Sport, it was really just a different color on the bottom part to make it look more like kind of different cladding, but it's actually the same body panels that you get on a standard Impreza. You get some roof rails, and some of them had a nifty little mid-spoiler on the back of the hatchback, but yeah, it's an Impreza hatchback with a little lift kit, some two-tone paint job, and a fancy name. Speaking of that fancy name, if you're still confused about Impreza Outback Sports, I can't blame you, because even this car that I'm driving is confusing. The passenger parts of the lower parts of the doors just say Outback Sport. The badge on the tailgate just says Impreza Outback, and to make it even more confusing, it just says Impreza on the bumper cover on here. Now that was an option then, but still, there's nothing on this car that says Impreza Outback Sport altogether. And it never really was that clear. Now, naming stuff and technicalities aside, this car didn't really sell quite as well as the Legacy Outback did. In fact, the Legacy Outback became so popular that, as we know at this point, it became its own thing. It was an Outback. Somewhere in the mid-2000s, they made the switch from Legacy Outback to just having a Legacy and just having an Outback. The two are still very close to each other these days. There's a lot of shared parts between the current 2019 Legacy and the current 2019 Outback. And if you're watching this and they haven't unveiled the 2020 Outback yet, you can bet that it's going to be an awful lot like the 2020 Legacy that just got unveiled a little bit ago. So again, those are the same car. Same thing here. It just took longer for it to catch on for some reason. The bigger SUVs were more popular, and as people have gotten more of a taste for SUVs, but they don't want a massive size, that's where this thing comes in. But the Impreza Outback Sport was kind of a weird, kind of confusing model back then. So they nixed it. 2011 was the last year for that name. And then when the 2012 Impreza came out in its fourth generation at that point, just like they did back in the 90s, the following year, the all-new exciting XV Crosstrek made its debut. Oh, there goes one now. It's the same idea as this car. It's just a different name, and it's got more ground clearance, and instead of just a two-tone paint job, it's got some cladding on the sides. But I can take the headlights, the taillights, the hood, the hatchback, all four doors, all of the glass, and every bit of the interior out of an Impreza hatchback, and put it into a Crosstrek. They're the same car. It's really just suspension and kind of tougher looking cladding on around the fenders and stuff like that. That's it. Now, why has the Crosstrek now done so well? I mean, part of it is more capable than this car was. It has more ground clearance. It's a little bit tougher car. Obviously, in time, it's gotten more space. It's safer. All these other things. So the Crosstrek's a great car. Don't catch me out there. I still love these old Imprezas. I have a soft spot for them myself. But what's interesting is that the Crosstrek has succeeded so much that it's become Subaru's third best-selling model. And the Impreza that it's based on, almost the same car, isn't doing quite as well. Now, not to say the Impreza is doing poorly, but in terms of sales figures, for them really being 3 inches of ground clearance apart and some cladding, I would think that people would be going towards Imprezas as well. They're still all-wheel drive. They still have all the safety features, all these other things that they share between them. But we have, when I say we, I mean the current buyers have this sweet tooth for crossover SUVs. But they don't want to pay too much for them, and they don't want them to be too big in some cases, especially if you're used to driving smaller cars. So that's why the Crosstrek, I think, has really taken off recently, is because it's a small, capable little crossover car with all-wheel drive and some ground clearance. And it's been leading the class for a while too. If you look at reviews and you look at other stuff, I mean, I'm a Subaru fan already, but even if I wasn't, there's no denying that the Crosstrek has taken the compact crossover SUV market by storm. And it's kind of the benchmark. When you look at a lot of reviews and stuff like that, if they're smaller than the Crosstrek, they tend to be kind of too small. If they're bigger than the Crosstrek, then they're in a completely different class, apparently. It's hard for other auto manufacturers, seemingly, to directly compete with the little Crosstrek. All they need to do is take their small hatchback car, give it some ground clearance and all-wheel drive, and they should be good, right? That should be the formula. That's what's worked for Subaru, at least. But yeah, it's always kind of funny to me when people are like, "Oh, the Crosstrek's new in 2013." There's no older ones than that. There is. I'm driving it. The Impreza Outback Sport, as strange and weird as they were, it wasn't a brand new idea for Subaru. They just gave it the same treatment that they had been giving to the Outback all those years. So if I missed something, or if you'd like to chime in on stuff, leave a comment. Love to read up on those and see what you guys have to say. If you got ideas for more content or other questions you have, post them down there and I'll get to them. But yeah, the Impreza Outback Sport. Now, funky interiors and all. If you've ever seen the interiors on these old Impreza Outback Sports, they are funny looking. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys around.